Warning! The following episode of Between the Studs contains spoilers for LEGO Masters Season 2. You have been warned. Welcome to the most extreme Between the Studs we've ever had. Yeah. Oh yeah. We're talking about LEGO Masters Season 2. Flip my block. Yeah! Man, we're getting... Okay, I can't keep doing this. I mean,
this is ridiculous. Right?
You're no Will Arnett. That's for sure.
Thank goodness, right?
This was his episode. I think he really wanted to.
That's right. He lobbied really hard. Can we do an extreme thing?
I think he just decided. He's a producer. He could be like, we're going to do this, and it's going to be hilarious.
You know, actually, before we get into it, I thought the twist was going to have something to do with something extreme because they kept setting it up. Because otherwise, those skits didn't make any sense in the context of what was going on. But then nothing super extreme happened. I felt like if they were going to do an extreme thing, they were going to use it on one of the explosions or something like that.
Does Fox even own that show, Flip My Block? Because that's like on a DIY channel or something.
Probably.
My wife and I watched that show, and it is really good, and it's just like Will was acting. It was also filmed in Georgia.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the block. Well, they might have done different seasons, but the one we saw was filmed up in Dallas, Georgia.
I guess that's why he did it, why the extreme thing was part of it. So that show's pretty good?
It is, yeah, it's really good.
Okay. They don't put any movement or turn anything to a pig, do they?
No.
Now, when I was younger, I used to watch Extreme Home Makeover on ABC, and that was really fun as well. So I don't know if there's a connection to that as well. That's more like a family, like, oh, these people need this house renovated for them, so they rebuild and... So it's that as well, but I think it's a little less extreme than even the title suggests.
I guess that's where the extreme thing came from. It's just those shows in general is what it was. I don't know. That just went over my head, I guess, since I don't watch those shows.
They got Steven talking in this one a lot as well. What was up with that? For the whole episode, you didn't talk till the end of the episode, it seemed. I was like, where's Mark?
Because he's busy.
They're getting Steven talking to himself.
yeah, literally talking to himself. Yeah.
Which was so
funny. He's hilarious. He's like, we're going to break it down, but we're going to reuse them. He's like, I love it.
I don't know why he was talking to himself there, but it's hilarious. Part of it is I tend to be the aggressive, yeah, we did this, we're winning type thing, and then Steven is the, oh, we're doing all right, you know, so they want to show that with the more kind side, the more peaceful side, so I don't know. That might have something to do with it. It's entertaining to watch, at least.
Did you have to remind Steven that he's not there to have fun? He's there to win.
We're there to kick butts. Yeah. Well, see, I think that's why we're a great team. Is I would be too focused, and Steven would be too smelling the daisies, you know, and so he wouldn't notice the fact that we're actually in a competition. So.
Kind of like when he built a giraffe that was perfect.
But small.
But this tiny,
yeah. We do well when we mix our talents versus separately. So I think that they're covering the softer side right now.
You know what surprises me a lot about this show? The judges come up and they tell people what they need to do and what's wrong with their model, and they don't change it. They seem to do that every single episode. They told David and the DJ that their penguin was
more coral.
Too much of a penguin, and they needed to make it something different. And what did they do? They didn't change it. You know, it looked awesome, but they just didn't change it. And they kind of did that in this episode with the movement, and with Caleb and Jacob's movement or something like that. They were telling them they needed to show more movement. They never seemed to do what the judges suggest.
The idea still ended up the same, basically. You know, it's like they might have included a little bit, but not a huge difference.
Like you said, they're telling you how to win. You might as well listen to them.
Yeah. Steven and I were absolutely, if it was at all possible, we would always try and shift to what the judges were saying, even if it wasn't our first preference.
And I felt like you guys did that when you built the gnome tree, the hanging gnome forest tree. They said, go out of your box, build color, and they made it look like you guys did that. Yeah. But most of the other teams don't seem to listen.
Except for Build Big. That one challenge where you're like, we're not building big.
The hanging brick one, we held back despite having a very large creation. We didn't go as big as some of the teams there, and it worked out. There's a balance, and there's a knowledge of the physical attributes of Lego that really comes into play. And it's like, even if they say go big, it's like, you may not want to go the biggest because that one's going to break.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Zach and Wayne fell into that this time, definitely, with their build. But let's get into it. So you walk out, you see did you see the houses, or were they behind him?
They were there, I think.
Okay.
They were just visible from the start, and so they're talking about extreme, flip my block or flip my brick, whatever the term was. This is what we're doing, yay! And that in the cut, they actually barely covered what the challenge was about. It's like lots of motion. Transform my house. They didn't cover the fact that you needed at least 4 different things moving in your build.
Really?
Yes. That's a lot of things moving, because it was 1 in the first episode. And everyone was like, well, we got to have something moving. Wow. Now it's like, you got to have at least 4 things moving. And every team definitely did that with varying degrees of success, right? They didn't show that in the cut, which I don't understand why.
Yeah.
It makes it much higher stakes, more dramatic. I don't know why. Maybe they, want to keep it vague. I didn't like that choice at all. That was the initial walk-in. So.
What were your 4 movement elements?
We had actually 5, I believe, 5 or 6. So we had more movement than was necessary. Basically, I don't think it had to be necessarily a different type of movement, but it had to be individual objects that were moving. First one that we did was a little skeleton arm with a guitar popping up and down out of the ground. You didn't even see it in the cut, but it was there. And the second one was a tentacle reaching towards the mailbox and doing like a sidewinding motion, which was very complex. Took me about an hour to build. And then another motion was we had a big eye in the garage that was spinning, very basic. Another motion we had was the ghosts moving in the window. Pretty simple. It just had some ghosts on a little spinning wheel. And then the roof, both panels moved up and down. Very slowly, kind of, it looked like the roof was almost breathing. And then I think on the last one we had a plant on the side wall of the house going up and down kind of aggressively fast. And that was because it was attached to a piece inside that was going up and down. We had a lot of different movement going on, and you didn't really see any of that at all in the cut. So.
I remember the ghost, the plant, and they talked about the tentacle, and they talked about the roof, but I don't remember seeing it unless it was just in the pan real quick.
Like a second or 2 of the roof. And they actually showed more of us building the roof than actually the final roof. The final shots for each build was so short because of the animations and the amount of Will interviews that you didn't get to see hardly any of the final build at all. So.
And we always talk about that. I wish they showed more of the builds. And in one side of my brain is like, of course, we wish that because we're Lego people and we're into Lego. But then you got to think mass audience, America. They need to be a little more spoon-fed, has to be more exciting. But in this sense, I felt like it was too much.
Yeah.
Show us a little more. I mean, give me 2 more minutes of the builds, please.
Yeah.
It was, like you said, maybe the editing was just like a little wonky on this one.
I think that the entire finale build display time was like 2 minutes. And they spent you got so much more time interviewing and building and talking versus... You barely saw what anyone did at the end, and it just made everything confusing, in my opinion. I really did not like the choices of that part either.
So you had to have 4 movement pieces. You had to disassemble the house, and then you had to use those pieces.
All
so
the
whatever
pieces.
color.
Yep.
And you guys got 10.
We didn't.
The dreaded 10.
We weren't trying to outrun anybody, so we just kind of trotted behind everyone, and we just grabbed the 10 house. We're like, we'll take the deck that we're given because... We also were explained at the beginning of this challenge that this is the last opportunity we would have to use the golden brick. They didn't show that at all in the final cut. And so we're like, obviously, this is our last chance to use the golden brick. We're probably going to use it. Duh. We'll just get what we get and do the best job we can. No pressure. Just, do something nice for TV.
Did they say that to you guys in front of everyone? How was that presented?
It was said to everyone at the beginning. We asked the producers separately. For sure, we can't use it. We can't save it for later. And obviously, we're going into the last few episodes. We can't save it, and they're like, "No, this is your last chance to use it. Otherwise, we'll just take it from you." We even talked to Will about it. He came up. He did so many talking sessions with everyone. He came over and was like, "Hey guys, how you doing?" We're like, "Oh yeah, we're doing good." And he's like, "Yeah, you still got the golden brick, right? Yeah, it's the last chance to use it. I mean, you could just build a Lego sign that says "suck it," and we would still have to let you pass." And we're like, "Yeah, but we're gonna try and build something nice anyway." So he's like, "That's great." So it was kind of like Mark and Boone in this similar situation. I think it was episode 8 for season 1, where there was 4 teams left, and they were using the golden brick, and it's like, this is the last chance to use the golden brick, so we're here, we're safe, but we're going to build something fun anyway. We did the exact same thing, and they didn't present it the same way, and I don't know why, other than just to keep things vague, to try and add drama. I think it's a sign of strength for us that we kept the golden brick as long as we possibly could, and we're forced to use it. versus, oh, we just use it randomly and it made no sense because, spoilers, no one was eliminated. It's like, are they trying to make it look like they didn't screw us over, or are they trying to make it look like we got screwed over? It doesn't even make sense.
Yeah.
Did you guys know no one was getting eliminated, or was that a surprise?
We thought someone would be eliminated based on the pattern of season 1. So there was a lot of pressure outside of the people with the golden brick. It was a bit of a surprise, but I was happy because I didn't want to say bye to anyone. It gets sadder and sadder each time. Just a lot of weird editing choices and a lot of vagueness, and I think it's confusing for someone who's watched the show, and it's confusing for LEGO fans. Maybe people who don't know anything about LEGO won't mind it so much, but it bothered me a lot.
I will agree with you. The whole golden brick thing I wish they would have mentioned that, because they're safe. Why? There's no way they're going to be in the bottom.
Our house looks pretty good. We probably aren't going to be going home today, even if we didn't have the golden brick.
Did you guys use power functions or powered up?
Powered up. There weren't any power functions, although some of the motors, were the same color as the powered up ones. They're like the servos and other things like that. So it looked like it could have been, but it was all powered up. And very hard to work with, I will say. Much harder than just a LEGO powered up set. Because you're trying to do something that's original, you have to program it, and it didn't work most of the time. So thankfully ours worked when the judging happened, and they didn't even show it afterwards. But some teams were really struggling with it worked once and then it didn't work the next time.
Was it because of the powered up's fault, or was it just user error?
A little bit of both, but I'd say more the fact that it was just hard to use.
So. We're seeing people want power functions. They want to go back to power functions because they're so simple.
Yeah.
And we've had some people bring in those powered up bricks, and they're not working.
Yeah.
The Bluetooth connection doesn't work anymore.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So that's one of the problems with getting too much technology. It
doesn't work
in your stuff. So I wouldn't be surprised if they go back to something slightly more simple to move their
at least give you the option, right? Have an on-off switch versus going into your phone every time.
Those power functions motors are like $50 now for a simple little motor that used to be $8 or something like that. I don't know. But we don't have any. People come in all the time asking for them. Somebody was on top of the game and bought us out.
I'm always curious about that because I've never built motion ever. When something works in testing and then you add to it and it fails, is it usually because weight or the gears slip because you changed something that you didn't even realize you changed? What makes it fail?
Sometimes it's the fact that we're moving the builds. The actual motion of going over there desyncs pieces. It doesn't line up the same way it was when I was working on the table 2 minutes earlier. Sometimes in the process of testing it, it'll work fine, but once you stop, something will desync. Somehow there's a thing that no longer lines up the way it did, either weight or movement, some sort of motion applied to it that doesn't, it causes a problem. And then sometimes, just something will unsnap or separate. So we had one of those midway through testing and I had to strengthen it with the roof because it was so big. Things like that. Just a variety of reasons why it could stop working. And I'm pretty sure I heard from Natalie that was basically what happened with their things. That's why you got the dramatic commercial pause on their thing not working. It was working fine when they tested it, and as soon as they got it over there, something was no longer working. Similar to how in episode 1 of season 1, Mark and Boone's amazing roller coaster no longer worked when they got it up there. The whole movement of the builds is silly in itself.
I mean, you see it when every single episode when you guys move your models over to the table, something falls off.
Yeah, Zach and Wayne's tail fell off because he was going so fast. Yeah,
why does something fall off every time? Is it because is there like Lego on the floor and you're trying to dodge it and you go over it and it's bumpy? Is the floor bumpy or something?
Well, our build had Dracula on top, and Dracula fell off during movement because our table had multiple wheels that were very either bent or messed up, and it just vibrated like a dishwasher or a dryer. It just was like, oh, wow. And so we're like, and then finally Dracula fell off, and we're like, okay, put him back up, and we literally we lifted the table 4 inches off the ground and walked the rest of the way because we were like, enough of that.
Yeah, so. It sounds like somebody booby trapped it.
That crossed our minds, but I think it's I wouldn't even give them the benefit of the doubt of that intelligence. I would just say it was pure negligence. So I'm just like, they didn't realize the table was completely wonky and just was like, there's one out there. So.
Were they IKEA tables?
I think they were built for the show, but I'm not sure. They were much sturdier than IKEA tables, except for the wheels. So
they need what Boba Fett uses to move Han Solo.
Oh, it's just like anti-gravity?
Yeah, just floated across the air. That's what they need.
All right, Lego Masters, get on that.
Season 3.
What was that backyard thing?
Yes.
It looked like, because they normally don't waste space, right? So there was this house, and then it looked like there was the same amount of space the house was taking up. There was this flat backyard with just a few little trees on it.
Mm-hmm.
Was there anything to that?
Yeah, so I actually asked the producers about that while we were just starting, and they're like, "Oh, don't worry about that. Just build your house." And you know what that means?
Yes.
There's a twist
Dun,
coming.
dun, dun.
But and I'm like, "Oh no, we're gonna have to build a yard or something in the back too." But it ended up not happening, and they ended up having a different twist with the NPU seed part challenge. They never brought out the yard. I think it's because more than halfway through, everyone's house reno looked pretty terrible. Nobody looked complete or done or in a good place. And so they're like, if we bring out this big twist with the big backyard, then it would just destroy everybody. We wouldn't have enough time to get it done. I think they just were like, man, let's just hold back and let them try and finish their houses.
They changed?
I think so. But I can't confirm that because they didn't tell me. But based on the fact that it was very suspiciously a twist in the beginning and it didn't happen because I think a lot of teams were struggling. Steven and I had a very rough start to our build. It just didn't work out. And I think that they held it back and instead did the seed parts.
So they changed the twist in real time during the shooting.
I wouldn't be surprised. But
Wow. Wait, unconfirmed, but that's our suspicion.
that's our theory from the guy who was on the show. So yeah.
Did you guys like the twist, the C part?
We were fine with it. All the pieces were very weird and hard. The cup is actually, it seems like the most useful, but only has two connections. It has the bar and the bottom. The top is not able to snap to anything. So it's kind of limited, but at the same time, Steven has done, Steven and I have both done seed part challenges at the highest level. I don't know if anyone watching this has heard of the Iron Builder. It's a very, very intense competition. Lasts a month, and you have to use a weird part against somebody else and try and build as many cool creations with that weird part as possible. We got beat by the guy who beat Tyler twice in our challenge. So it's like, this is how tough those things are. And we did good. We made 30 creations in a month. They were all different sizes, some big, some small, but we got beat. And so, but Steven, in a particular one, he was given a cup. And he won that particular one. When we went together, we lost.
Is that what they showed on the screen?
Yeah, those builds were from that particular challenge. Okay. He was like, oh yeah, I know a dozen uses for that cup already, in pink, not in yellow, but we're like, okay. I ended up using most of the techniques that Steven had used. The fence was new, the organ on the chimney was new, a few things were different, but we knew what to do. We've been in seed part challenges before. I think a lot of the other teams, especially Caleb and Jacob, were like, what do we do?
Yeah.
And Zach Wayne ended up having a good single use with the feathers on the wings, but I think the judges were looking for more than one use. And most of the teams had like one use. Like Natalie Michelle, Zach Wayne had one use. And then Caleb and Jacob had so many that they put it everywhere in a variety of uses. Didn't quite look as good in my.
Theirs was the worst
They
one.
had the hardest one
Snakes.
for sure. And so Steven and I think, did the best with the seed part. And I think that helped us win in the end, is that our twist, we totally handled it just fine. And it actually helped bring more color to our creation.
So you were thinking the backyard was going to be some kind of addition you had to do, and then when they saw how little everyone had gotten done, they were like, no, we're not doing this. This is not going to make good TV.
No. it'd be too hard.
Interesting. Okay. What would you have done?
If we had the backyard, we would have done some sort of haunted playground probably, but it's hard to say. In that moment, we would have tried to come up with something cool. I don't know if anyone would have done anything good. So if we would put a swing set, a little sandbox, a little merry-go-round, things like that, but it would have taken another couple hours, and the rest of the build would have suffered greatly. So
How much time did you guys have at this challenge?
it was 11 hours for the whole challenge, I think.
Oh, okay, that's quite a bit.
Not bad, but a lot to build. And if it was, we made ours 360. I don't know. Some of the teams weren't as 360 as others. It was a lot of time, but we faltered quite a bit at the beginning. And then towards the end, the last 3 hours, we did really good. So it ended up coming together quite nicely. So.
Could you expound on what you mean by faltered? Like the planning, the design, the just the technique part?
Well, I don't want to throw Steven under the bus, but he was, his windows and some of the parts he was building were looking way too castle-y. And we're like, this is a house, not a Gothic cathedral. Steven, we got to change those windows. He's like, what? And so I'm like, and just, we did
he
a
get
flat
really
top.
mad
He
at
was
you?
doing he was doing these like peaked windows, and I'm like, it's too complicated, it's too detailed. We need to really simplify it and focus on the color. And so we had to basically shift gears a little bit and change it because I was going in the wrong direction. And in long term, we didn't like the fact that he mixed in dark tan bricks in the foundations as well. He was making it look kind of like a textured castle wall, and it's like, we ended up kind of patching it all over, but it didn't look as good as it could have if it was just plain tan, for example. So there was some design choices that weren't as effective for our final result, and we ended up overcoming them, but it took more time and made it a little closer than it should have been, I think. But it ended up okay.
I love spooky haunted house, Halloween stuff. How did you come to that as your house?
That was almost our first idea immediately, because we're like, what do we do to the house to make it more interesting, more lively, and have motions? Like, well, if you think about it, one of the main tropes of a movie centered in a house, is a haunted house, or ghosts, or something scary monsters. So it's like we just thought that would be a really fun, different twist on a house versus like something that didn't make sense. Mm-hmm. So it actually makes perfect sense logically, and then it has a lot of opportunity for interesting stuff. So that was immediately our first idea. And in fact, Steven went over to each team and was like, what are you guys doing? Because we're doing a haunted house. You better not do a haunted house. So and they're like,
crack his knuckles?
No, we were like, please do not do a haunted house, because we don't want any overlap. And everyone's like, oh, no, we got this. We're doing this. And I know Caleb and Jacob were pretty like, yeah, we're definitely not doing a haunted house. I think we're leaning more towards like a log cabin type stuff. They were leaning towards that ski lodge. Natalie and Michelle were like, we don't know what we're doing, but we're not doing a haunted house.
Yours was the only one that was a house.
Yes.
Caleb and Jacob had a house-like structure to it, but it was just a mountainside resort with a bunch of houses. It wasn't a single house.
Yeah.
Was that part of the rules? Was it?
They said transform the house into something that's amazing and creative and make sense of who lives there, why the house is, So there was like, it wasn't like build a flying pig. It was like build a house. So I think that they would have done well to mention the fact that we were the most true to the theme. And that probably helped us with our final build, is that ours was actually Dracula's house in a neighborhood, and everyone else was either a carnival, a flying pig, or a ski lodge. None of these are houses. I mean, they're vaguely like houses. The flying pig isn't the least bit like a house. Another editing choice is very poor, in my opinion.
Did they mention that in the critiques?
They liked the fact that our build was a house. It made a lot of they liked the color. I don't know why they included Amy's one off. The color, not enough color. I'm like, are you kidding me? If we added more color, we would blind you. But
did you see the fence? I mean, the fence was awesome. It was like a rainbow.
This is one of our most colorful builds, and that was her one. Actually, that was like probably the only critique she had for the build. Everything else she liked. She liked all the motion. She liked the different characters we had built. They included more of the critiques than all the kind things that they said, and they included all the kind things a few kind things they said about the other builds, and none of the critiques. Well, a few of them, but no.
I want to get into that when we get into the judging. Chris, what did you think of the individual builds when you started seeing them actually take shape?
I really liked Zach and Wayne's motion. The wings were beautiful. Mm-hmm. I mean, even when you just saw the Technic lift arm going like this, that was cool. So the wings really took away from the ugliness of the pig. The ski lodge the buildings with the landscape in the background was gorgeous. I mean, it was a great build by itself, but what I was disappointed with is the chairlift moved, but you didn't even see it moving because it was just the belt.
It was just a chain on a pole.
Yeah, and it's like, where's the chairs? You can't even, literally, you could not see it moving because
there's nothing.
There was nothing to see move, but it was moving on the show. Did they not have time to figure out how to hang chairs on it?
Yeah,
is that what happened?
They couldn't figure it out with the size of it.
Because I was thinking about how they could have hung chairs on it, and when you actually attach something to that chain and then it goes through gears, it's going to get caught up, or whatever they use to turn it. So it's not easy, and that's probably what they.
I was thinking of that too, and I would have used the bigger treads with actual stud connections, the anti-stud or the holes they have, and somehow figured out a way to do that. But did you guys have the larger treads? Because they use the smallest ones Lego makes, right?
I think they use those because it's the most cord-like.
Oh, okay.
And it also fits the gears very nicely. So if you do the other ones, it may not line up so well.
Or they'll slip off.
Yeah, and it's also as thick as like a band versus like a cord. So it's like the piece for that doesn't necessarily exist.
Oh, okay.
And there isn't an easy solution to that at all. It's something that was very physically hard to do with the pieces that we had.
I also like to think of, after I see the show, it's like, okay, what would I have done? And the first thing that came to my mind was a house with a hot air balloon holding it up. And then I was like, hold on, wait.
Where have I seen that?
That's a movie. That's Up.
Yeah.
So that wouldn't work. In fact, do you think they'd discourage you if you did something like that?
It's totally against the rules. First of all, you can't do anything political, religious, or any branded IP.
What about folklore?
You could do like a legend or like
Yeah, Jack and the Beanstalk.
a little
That's
bit
right.
of mythology, things like that. Something that's totally non-copyright though.
Are you familiar with Baba Yaga?
Yes, a little bit. So it's
Because her house has giant chicken legs.
that would have been a cool idea. Yeah. That would probably be safe enough to build.
Yeah.
Or something very similar to it.
So, you didn't mention Natalie and Michelle's.
Correct. Yeah, I didn't. I really like power functions and movement and stuff, and it is easy to make something turn. It's not easy to do anything else.
Yeah.
Even, Caleb and Jacob's chairlift, all it is turning, but at the same time, how do you get those chairs to hang from it while it's turning? That's hard. I wanted to see something more than just something spinning. I can do that.
Yeah.
To make it do anything else is interesting. In fact, when Mark got back from filming, we were rebuilding our city, because while he was gone, we sold a lot of the buildings that are in our city. He got back and I was like, hey, let's see more movement in the city this time, because we've got USB connections everywhere for the lights. So why not just hook up the USB to motors? And so Mark's like, oh yeah, I can do that simple. And I'm like, since when?
Since doing this episode, yeah.
Because, I'm used to seeing Mark do still life, castles, building structures, landscapes, and I'm like, since when is Mark building Technic stuff? The first thing he builds was the Jurassic Park dinosaur coming out, and it's like, oh wow, that is awesome. Since when are you doing this? And it's really cool to see something do something other than spin.
Yeah.
It's cool seeing something spin, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But to see something do something other than spin, that's really
neat. And to explain a little bit of what Chris is saying, if you've never worked with those power functions before, that is the only motion those things do. You can put different connections to it, but all it does is rotate. There's no forward and back. That's all it does. So you got to figure everything else out from the initial motion of it just rotating.
Yeah, gears, crankshafts, lift arms, everything else to figure out how to transfer that motion.
Yeah, that's really, if you've never worked with power functions and you're watching this episode and you're thinking, oh, why didn't they just do, it's because you have to then transfer the energy in different creative ways. Actually, Mark went from hating Technic to loving Technic, right? Like, don't you have a tattoo of a lift arm?
No, I still hate Technic, but I'm actually, Steven and I had to really evolve like a Pokemon for this this whole season, because there's so many technical challenges, all physical. It's not build something that looks good. It's build something that stands up to the physical challenge or moves in 4 different ways. It's so physical and technical that it makes for better TV, but it's not actually what Lego building is. That's not the majority of Lego building. That's like a niche. It's a section. It's a theme of Lego. Steven and I are like, we're doing the best we can, but this is absolutely out of our forte and our wheelhouse. And we're really looking forward to the time when we're able to build something that doesn't have to have some crazy physical element. We can just build something that looks good. Because that's why we're here, is we can build something that looks really good.
Yeah.
So,
Well, you guys definitely have grown using and figuring it out trial by fire.
Yes.
What's interesting about that is you can see the other contestants are getting better as the season goes. And I could imagine you do anything for 12 hours a day, you're going to get better at it even in that short amount of time. I'm watching Lego Masters Australia right now, which was the first one. It came out before the US one, and the episodes are like an hour and a half long each. And the contestants are Australia being a smaller country, they're not as skilled as the American contestants. So I feel like I could compete on the Australia one. They're good, but they're not as good. They're not professional level. So you could see them getting better and better and better. And the episodes being an hour and a half long, they explain that I did not know how to use Technic beginning of filming, but halfway through, they're doing stuff that is really complicated Technic building as far as adding gears and changing the angle of motion.
Are the challenges longer as well, or just the episodes?
Just the episodes.
Okay.
The time is pretty similar in chunks, so.
So is there more Australian Will Arnett? How do they fill that time?
They cover way more of the building, and I wish that in this episode they would have leaned a little more towards the building and not so much of the wheel arnett. As I actually really enjoyed it, but it's just there was a little bit too much. Like if you have multiple Will Arnett interviews with a team, maybe they're a little out of balance in this episode.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, because I mean, Caleb and Jacob, I think they had 2 or 3. They had more than one with me and Steven, Natalie, Michelle. It's like, I don't know if you need like 2 or 3 check-ins with Will that are each 2 minutes long. You know, it's
Yeah.
like
It's a catch-22 because Will Arnett is hysterical.
I enjoyed it immensely.
Everything he said was so LOL, you know, laugh out loud funny. But then again, it's not a comedy show.
Yeah.
Even though you're laughing the entire time,
Mm-hmm.
it's a Lego building challenge. So it's how do you combine the two,
Yeah.
the right amount
Yeah.
of time? And
That's-
like Mark said, I mean, it was entertaining to watch.
When you guys are coming down to the wire, you finally getting your builds together. At what point did you guys feel confident, or did you ever feel confident?
First of all, we got our seat parts, like, and then we get into the next part. We start applying those cups, and it looks pretty good. It's actually accentuating the build. And we're like, okay, this is actually not too bad. We were really worried about some of the design choices earlier on. It's all working out now, and we're like, yeah, we if we can finish up all that we've got, you know, going into this build, it'll look great. We won't have a problem. We were looking over at the other 2 builds across from us, Caleb and Jacob and Natalie Michelle. They seem to be struggling a bit, so we're like, eh. Then we look over at Zach and Wayne. They have this big winged thing, and it's like, it's really cool, but it's not really a house. I wonder how the judges are going to see that. So it was another like, well, will the judges like the big wings or will they like the house? And we were like, well, at least we think we would be in the top 2 this week. And we're like, yeah, well, we're doing good. We felt good about it. And we felt so good about it towards the end after they had given some final round of critiques that we're like, do we even need to use the golden brick? We're like, should we just hang on to it and be like, come and take it? It would be such a ballsy move to do that. And we're like, oh, we were so tempted.
Turn around, throw in the trash.
Yeah, exactly. That's why Steven was like, it'd be a total baller move to not use the golden brick on the last time we could use it. But
Did he say that on TV?
he did.
He did, because you guys were watching it with us, and I got confused. As my memory as what he actually said while we were watching it, and then what he said on TV. That's funny that he said that too.
And what's funny is, despite not covering any of the fact that this is the last chance to use it, the dialogue makes perfect sense. I think I mentioned that earlier. We felt good about our build at the end. The last 3 hours or so, we were like, looks good, just got to finish it up. We don't have much time.
And how were the other teams feeling, or were you aware? You were too into what you guys were doing?
I didn't pay a lot of attention to the last couple hours because we were building so frantically, but from what I gathered, they, despite having a rough start as well, they were able to pull it together that it made sense at the end. Caleb and Jacob were like, at the end, we're actually okay with this build, even if it's really not our favorite. And then Natalie and Michelle were like, we got the motion to work, we got the aesthetics that we wanted, it's the best that we could do in the situation. You know? So they weren't like, we failed. It was like, we did pretty good. We got it together at the end.
Theirs did look like they wanted it to look. I mean, it looked like a circus. It was good. It just didn't have the technical.
Yeah. And did theirs only have 2 motion? You said originally
they had like 4 or 5 because they had the 2 lights. They had
that counted
the
as 2.
hat. I think it would count as 2 different things, even though it's the same thing. It counts, but it's not as intricate as a different motion each time. You have the hat spinning around. You had a little thing in the popcorn machine stirring the popcorn.
Oh, I didn't even see that.
I know, right? I knew it was there because I had seen their build. But and then that was, I think that was about it for motion. But they had a couple different types of motion, and they qualified. But it was all the very simple rotation. Caleb and Jacob, they didn't cover the fact that the garage door opened, the lights turned on, the whole side of the volcano exploded out and shot out a bunch of snakes, which is really cool. And so they didn't cover all that. So they had multiple things in motion. Some of theirs were more one time, which is interesting. And then Zach and Wayne had obviously a bunch of wings, and then they had a bunch of propellers on top. It's all the same thing, but it's nice. So
it counted.
It definitely counted. And so it's like when you count about who had the most distinct types of motion, Steven and I blew them all out of the water.
Were the wings the same exact thing that they built for the float?
It was very similar.
Okay.
It was only a slightly different transfer of motion. So instead of it all going up and down, it all went side to side and it pulled in a different way versus going that way.
Okay, so it was slightly different.
It's a different technique, but it's the same principle.
How in the world did they get a build that big and heavy to rotate and not just burn out whatever gears or motor?
A lot of gearing.
Okay.
And so if they have a motor in the bottom and they have the right size and variety of gears, you can multiply the strength of the motor and slow it down. So it spun, but it spun a little bit stutter step because it's pushing so hard.
Oh.
But it still spun, and it was very consistent. So it was like they were maxing out the amount of energy that one motor could do.
Would that burn out the motor pretty quick? Do those motors burn out?
I don't think so, but I think that it was like at some point it'll just stop working.
Okay.
Whenever I've gotten to the point where like it'll spin and it'll hit the table and it'll go beep, it'll stop. So I don't think it'll burn out, but
Okay.
it was getting to the max of that motor, which is impressive.
They didn't really show it, but did they have much negative critique for Zach and Wayne's?
They had so
Thing.
they really liked the fact that all the wings look cool, the propellers look cool, it's spinning. That's pretty cool. All the motion was cool, but they didn't like the fact that it was a pretty ugly looking build. The blotchiness of the color, the somewhat rough pixelation of it. It wasn't a well sculpted build.
And the body was totally square. It was a big block.
It was a big rectangle, and it really also wasn't really a house. They could have had at least some awnings, some windows. I think they had 1 or 2 windows on the side of it.
Yeah, there was a little porch just on the side, and that was it.
And it's like, that's a very afterthought thing. When you're thinking about it, you're supposed to transform a house, not build a giant flying pig. It's like, it's a total deviation from the theme of the challenge. So they liked what they did, but I think that they didn't win because it didn't make sense in a logical field of view. So.
And you said yours was the most 3D. Who had the least 3D? Because we didn't see.
Michelle and Natalie's
Oh,
back was very flat.
Oh, okay.
There wasn't anything to see at the back. Caleb and Jacob's mountain, it was very plain on the back because they just didn't have time to decorate it. Zach and Wayne was very 3D. Ours was pretty much 3D. You had one open window at the back so we could access the power functions and turn them on. And then behind there was actually a graveyard and other details, a colorful graveyard actually. And then all the windows were decorated on the back. So it was like we had a very 360 build. You could walk around any side, there's just that one access port. Everything else was detailed. The fact that we still had time to do that is, I think, a testament to our building quickly. So
You mentioned the graveyard. That's totally how I would have done your backyard, as to have a graveyard playground.
That's the same thing I was thinking.
A tombstone teeter-totter and stuff. That
The
would
guy
have been
coming up out of the ground.
Yes.
if they'd given us 14 or 15 hours,
Yeah.
sure.
The
But yeah.
sandbox has a tentacle coming out of it or something.
With Halloween coming up, I almost want to do that.
Oh,
Yeah,
we're
just-
doing it.
Yeah.
We're doing it.
Yeah.
Did you guys think you were going to win? Did you guys, like, we're a shoe-in? We're
We
the
knew-
only one that built a house.
Yeah, we knew it was definitely in the cards, but we could have easily seen them pick Zach and Wayne just based on the fact that it had a lot of motion, even if it was all the same type of motion. It's like, well, they could pick Zach and Wayne because they like Zach and Wayne's technical abilities, or they'll pick us because our colors worked and we had a lot of different types of motion. A toss between us two. We didn't think that Caleb, Jake, and Michelle would win, and we were worried that one of them was going to go home.
I was actually really surprised by that.
That was a good twist. I thought that was a
Yeah.
good surprise. So.
And they did not do that last year.
Yeah.
Right?
No, it was somebody got eliminated in the final 4, and then it was 3 and 3 for the last 2 episodes. There's still 2 more episodes of Lego Master Season 2.
Yeah, and I forgot that they did that on season 1.
They don't want you to guess what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So obviously they're changing things from last season.
Yeah.
a little bit.
All guys stretching those episodes.
That does remind me about Lego Masters Australia. Not all of them, but the same challenges you saw in the American episodes, which is fun. It's, when they got to the bridge challenge in Lego Masters Australia, it was exciting. Like, I mean, of course they weren't as good as the Tyler's bridge
Or even Mark and Boone.
Mark and Boone's. But they were still really good, and it's just, even if they're not good, it's just fun to watch.
Yeah.
It's such a fun challenge to do.
Would you say that is a very important homework to do if you're going to get on season 3, is watch the other countries?
There's a UK one out there too, and it's all free on Tubi. Tubi is a free app, and then you can watch. You just go on and watch it for free.
With ads, but yeah, it's very nice.
Yeah.
Okay, they should start sponsoring us.
We should contact them about that. Put our show on there.
Yeah.
But enough about Lego Masters. Let me tell you about Tubi.
I got home last night and I was like, man, I love watching Lego Masters. I want to see more of it, but it was too late.
Yeah.
And those are hour-and-a-half episodes. I was because I'm still watching and I'm not to the end yet.
Yeah. Are there less episodes because they're so long? Or is it the same
It's
amount?
about the same amount of episodes.
Wow.
They
That's a
still
lot
have
of
a lot of
Like 8 or
teams,
9
so-
episodes, yeah.
a
So.
lot of Lego content. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely do your homework if you're going on season 3. Watch UK's and Australia's.
Yeah.
There's also a bunch in Europe too, but I don't know how to watch those. So
Okay.
you have
A
to
bunch, like as in like Belgium and
Germany,
Netherlands.
France, Netherlands,
Wow.
and Sweden. I think they have one in Denmark too. Or
Really?
they're doing one in Denmark. So it's like there's like 6 or 7 different European
there's
ones
going
as
to
well.
be language barriers on those.
And there's one in Spain that's coming up because I know a guy who's going to be on it, so pretty exciting.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah.
Next week, I'm really excited about. We've been wondering where your castles have been this whole time because you guys enjoy building castles. So when they said next week's challenge was going to be castle building, we were all like, what?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? And
Here's
I
your
know
trophy.
You can't say anything yet, but when Caleb came up and challenged you guys in the preview to what do you call it, the Castle Bros?
Castle Bros, yeah.
Castle Bros for the title. That makes it so much more interesting to watch the competition because they are good builders.
Yes.
I really enjoy what they build. They're professional level building, and I can tell that they like castle building, or they're good at it too because of the landscapes, the rock structures they build. So it's almost like one of those any given Sundays where you guys could have a brain fart, because you're tired and you've been building for 2 months, and they're drinking more coffee than you, and they just it's their time to shine.
Yeah.
You never know.
You never know what's going to happen.
It's not just a castle, it's building on a wall.
Yeah.
So there's this weird technical, like you saw the scaffold of Zach and Wayne's really quick, and it's like, looks like it's this big, and it comes down to the wall, and the wall looked like it only had a few little, I don't know
they did
how
more
that's
of a
going to work.
pagoda, right?
Yeah, they had an Asian kind of
Which is
castle.
cool,
Yeah, that is really neat. But I'm wondering, I'm so curious about the rules on this one, and like, is it about looks, or because they mentioned something about the farthest out wins or something, but then it's probably still has to look good. So if you have it really look nice, but then it falls, I guess it's like other episodes, they'll choose which rule they want to go by.
It's interesting. It's almost like a cross between, because they didn't do the bridge challenge this season, but this is kind of similar to the bridge challenge in that you're trying to get it to extend out,
just stick out,
and hang and almost suspend in air like a bridge.
And that makes me think, because Zach and Wayne are so in love with Technic, that they're going to do really well, even if theirs doesn't look good.
Yeah.
They're gonna have the farthest, craziest looking one. That's my guess.
I can say that going in, walking into the room and seeing all the castle stuff, me and Steven were like, yeah! And everyone was like, what the? So we were like so excited. And then I think Will actually brought it up right away. He's like, Mark, you seem really pumped for this.
You headbutted him.
Yeah, exactly. And so
extreme
we
castle
knew.
building.
You ripped off his sleeves.
I've seen Caleb's work in person at shows, and I know he's a great castle builder. But I don't think anyone really knew that that's like absolutely our bread and butter of building. And so they didn't realize quite how much we love castles and how much we're totally comfortable with that element. It is a physical challenge, so there's it's not
There's
like
two parts,
not just build a cool castle. Yeah, we would build a cool castle. It's like you got to build it on the wall. We've never done that. It is still that crazy element, but yeah, it's a lot to look forward to.
Oh, I can't wait. And that makes me think, if we're getting into predictions, that I think Zach and Wayne are going to do well, just because they're going to have the technical ability, even if theirs doesn't look the best. But again, it depends on what criteria they want to judge on. I think Natalie and Michelle, I think it's pretty apparent from this episode that Technic is their weak point. And they might be the ones going home. That's my guess. What would you say?
I think you're right, and Caleb and Jacob are a wild card. They've done good builds all season long, but there always seems to be one flaw with their build, and it just comes down to the rules. This past week it was this ski lift not having hanging chairs on it. Their building moved, but you couldn't see it move. It was like it moved so little that it was like, wait, did I see that or did I not see it? They could have the best build and then it fall. You never know. Like, and their monster truck.
Great monster truck.
Great example. They won the mini challenge. They had the extra time and then they drove it off the table. So, to me, they're a wild card.
For two guys that seem so not wild.
Yep,
they're
way wilder than they look.
I could see it, man. Caleb is always having fun with Will, and he's always positive and upbeat, and he's smiling.
Yes.
And he's fun to watch on TV.
And we're assuming a team's definitely going home. They wouldn't do that twice in a row.
It's the castle one next, and then I think there's one more episode
There's
after
one
that,
more.
the finale. Steve and I got to make it one more episode.
You can do it, Mark. I know
We'll
you
try.
can.
We'll try our best. I mean, castles.
Unless you don't, then don't get upset.
We'll see. We'll have to see how it goes.
The only thing I can think of is if Natalie and Michelle just pull it out of their hat or something and do something and theirs fails. That's the only way I can see them not moving on.
If I remember correctly, I haven't seen it for a year, but the first season, Sam and Jessica really had a couple of really good builds right at the end, and that kept them in the top 3. And it was I felt like it was surprising that they got to the top 3, but their builds were really good. And I can't remember for sure, but I feel like that was the case. So
They were definitely the wild card of last season.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. We will see you guys next time. We got 2 more episodes to go, and then it is over. We'll be back to doing our regular podcasts. I'll be sad to see our
We'll have to
reviews
come up
go.
with something else.
Hey, I've got a challenge for our viewers.
Uh-huh.
If you want Justin to wear a full suit of armor for next week's review, we need a certain number of comments asking him to do that.
Okay.
Or 100 likes in the video or something like that.
Yes. Yeah, we'll do that,
100
because that'll
likes,
never
yeah.
happen.
100 likes, Justin wears a
We-
suit of armor.
So our co-owner of the store, Ed, has a full suit of armor, which Justin has worn before.
Look at that review I did of the Black Knight's Castle.
Yeah, he'll wear that if we get it.
Justin's like,
Is
what
it,
am I
is
doing?
it 100
What-
likes? Is it 100 likes?
100 likes. We'll try it.
Come
We'll
on,
try it.
100
Okay.
likes in the this video, and Justin will wear a suit of armor. I want to see it. Come on.
Okay.
Castle, let's go.
For those of you who are subscribed, thank you so much. If you're not subscribed, please consider it. And we are available as a podcast, as an actual audio podcast on all your favorite podcasty things. So we will see you. All that stuff. I don't know how technology works. I'm only the
All the things.
media guy.
Like all the things.
And we will see you guys very soon. Thank you so much.
Duh. And it's just like, it's too bad.
Let me say that again, because
Yeah.
it sounded like I said something terrible.
Mark's bursting over here.
Yeah!